Well, in a month and a half, yeah, that was a huge announcement. So Mobile World Congress, I think the big announcement at the show was Verizon announcing their LTE vendors. So for us to be included in that was very big, and we were very, honored to be part of that. As far as progress, I think the progress we've seen is more people taking notice of Starent. There's been a lot of positive feedback and a lot of positive energy around Starent. We've been fortunate to be a partner with Verizon for several years on their 3G network. They're, a great customer. They're a great operator. So that's always been positive for us. And then the LTE has just added on to that. I can't get too specific, so I can kind of limit it to what Verizon announced. So they did announce all their LTE vendors, as we mentioned, and Starent was announced as a packet core vendor. And that's the relationship that we have with them now on the 3G network also, is providing packet core. Yeah, what I can tell you is we're certainly involved in a lot of LTE opportunities and pursuing business and working with operators to deploy those type of networks and get ready for the migration to 4G. What we did announce about a week ago was a relationship with Mobilcom Austria Group. They are an Eastern European operator. They operate in 8 countries, and they selected us to provide 3G core network for their UMTS network, but they also selected us for LTE. So Starent already now has 2 LTE customers. That's a good question. Yeah, no, I think there's still a lot of talk about LTE here. As you and I were talking earlier, Barcelona was so close to this show that I think a lot of that LTE conversation happened, in February. And I think what we're hearing a little bit more now here is talk about applications, the app stores, and kind of the content is now what's being talked about a little bit. But I think LTE is still a big part of this story. But I think we as an industry talked a lot about it already. Yeah. So when they do deploy new technology, sometimes there's slightly different variances in the software in, for example, our product. But as far as deploying HSPA now and using that same equipment and migrating it to 4G, that's one of the big advantages and differentiators that Starent provides. So we're working with operators now, and that's one of the things we talk to them about. We're saying, look, your HSPA decision is in many respects your 4G core decision, because if you pick the right equipment, you'll be able to migrate it to 4G through software upgrade. Now, the functional elements that the standards define are slightly different. In a 3G network like HSPA, you have an SGSN and a GGSN. These are the functional elements that are required for the packet core. In 4G, it becomes 3 elements. There's an MME, an S gateway, and a P gateway. But they're still very related. They'll be upgradable. The other thing to consider, though, is there's a lot of legs under 3G. I mean, we still have a long way to go as an industry in the deployment and consumption of 3G. So when we look at 4G, we look at it more as just an expansion of broadband capability and as an addition to, the 3G network. So an operator is going to want to look at how do I manage both the 3G and the 4G network effectively, and how do I integrate these networks. And that's another area that Starent's working on, is how do we make it easy for them to deploy an integrated 3G and 4G network that works together and that provides the service experience they want for their subscribers. That's right. Yeah, so we are members of the Volga Forum and working on that. And what they're looking at doing is providing voice over the LTE network. And there are going to be different ways that you provide voice over LTE, as you mentioned. What we're looking at Starent is making sure we give operators as much flexibility in how they can deploy voice over LTE. One of the things with LTE is moving towards an all-IP network. So voice is going to be a huge part of that eventually. So how do we, provide the voice capability? So Volga's providing one of those routes that we're working on.
But there's other routes. It's IMS one of those?
Yeah, IMS is one of those, and there are others.
But that will be a major trend. The reason I'm asking this, let me just give you the context, is because you said that 3G or HSPA is kind of the basis. Whatever you choose for your 3G is going to be almost the basis for your 4G solution. So that means that if you made a mistake or you haven't chosen the right one for the 3G, your 4G is going to be constrained because you're going to have to interact with that other vendor. So you're going to have to maybe replace it because it's not working properly because you're using Starent here and you're using X in there. I don't know. That was the scenario I was picturing.
Yeah. Well, I think, with that comment, I think as the operators are looking at deploying 3G, I think our point is that they really should also be considering what is the 4G, the LT migration. How does this 3G deployment impact 4G? What sort of options does it give me? Can they deploy any other sort of 3G solution and still, migrate to 4G? Certainly, because what you may see an operator do is deploy, the 3G packet core, and then separately, as they deploy LT, deploy a 4G packet core. But what we're saying is, look, if you would like, a good option is to deploy a 3G packet core that can migrate to 4G. And the benefit is not just taking the existing 3G equipment and turning it into 4G equipment, though that is one of the options. The benefit is having common kind of core and equipment so that you as an operator only have to support one type of platform. The benefit could also be, if it's the right type of solution, integrating 3G and 4G. So one of the things that we can do is we can run both 3G and 4G functionality on the same platform. So that the operator again has that flexibility to architect their network.